Hello, and welcome to Watch Stay Awake, the channel in which we discuss all things Jehovah's Witnesses. Let's begin. For many Jehovah's Witnesses, there comes to a point in their life where they realize that they're at a crossroads. Do they stay in the religion or do they leave? More than likely, they decide that they want to leave. The question is, how do they go about leaving? Some people are unfortunately disfellowshipped and they don't even get to leave on their own terms. Others submit a letter of disassociation, which basically says they no longer want to be a part of the religion. The problem with that is disassociation doesn't necessarily mean that you're free and clear and you can have a normal life and still not be subject to the rules of Watchtower. Let me explain why that's not the case.
Planning Board unanimously approved the site plan for the new world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses. We give praise and thanks to Jehovah for this important milestone in the relocation of the world headquarters to Warwick, New York. Your brother's governing body.
The reason why I showed you that clip is because I really want to drive home the point that Watchtower is a business entity and operates like any other business. This guy is the current president of the corporation Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, who replaced this guy back in 2014. Many corporations have businesses within the business. One of the businesses that Watchtower has is the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. The goal of every business is to mitigate risk to protect itself from lawsuits. Okay, so right now you might be saying, what in the world does any of this have to do with submitting a letter of disassociation? All right, so let me show you. So let's go to jw.org, and at the very top in the search box, type in the word disassociation. Okay, so boom, they've already got an article already ready for us. It says, can a person resign from being one of Jehovah's Witnesses? So let's click on that. All right, so again, we see the topic. Let's see. It says, yes, a person can resign from our organization in two ways. Let's check out the two ways. The first one says by formal request, either orally or in writing, a person can state his decision that he no longer wants to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The other way says by action, a person can take an action that places him outside our worldwide brotherhood. For example, he might join another religion and make known his intention to remain part of it. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. Let's continue to read. So the subheading says, what if a person no longer preaches or attends your meetings? Do you view that person as having resigned? Okay, so here's Watchtower's response. No, we do not. Resigning or disassociating oneself is different from becoming weak in faith. Often, those who, for a time, slow down or stop in their worship have not abandoned their faith but are suffering from discouragement. Rather than shunning such ones, we try to give them consolation and support. If the person wants help, congregation elders take the lead in providing spiritual assistance. All right, now this is the key part I really want you to pay attention to. It says, however, the elders are not authorized to coerce or pressure someone to remain as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Each person makes his own choice regarding religion. We believe that those who worship God must do so willingly from the heart. Okay, so keep in mind, now we just said that Watchtower is basically a business, and so is its subsidiaries, right? So, and what do businesses do? They try to mitigate risk. Why? Because they want to protect themselves from lawsuits, because they don't want to lose money and get sued, right? Okay, keep that in mind. Now, there's a reason why this statement is in this paragraph. When you're just reading it, it just sounds good, right? It sounds like, okay, well, there's no pressure. They're not going to bother you. You could just, do whatever. They're not going to press you. That's not why that's in there. Let me show you why that's in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google, okay, and I typed in, is there a law against forcing religion? Now, if you live in the United States, this is going to be applicable for only those who live here. I don't know what the laws are in other countries, so you'll have to research it on your own. But the Department of Justice is where I'm getting this article from, And under the topic that says number 1, the freedom of religion is a fundamental right of paramount importance, expressly protected by federal law. It says in that paragraph, religious liberty is enshrined in the text of our Constitution and in numerous federal statutes. It encompasses the right of all Americans to exercise their religion freely without being coerced to join an established church or to satisfy a religious test as qualification for public office. It also encompasses the right of all Americans to express their religious beliefs, subject to the same narrow limits that apply to all forms of speech. In the United States, the free exercise of religion is not a mere policy preference to be traded against other policy preferences. It is a fundamental right. Okay, so if you look at number 2, it says the free exercise of religion includes the right to act or abstain from action in accordance with one religious belief. It says the free exercise clause protects not just the right to believe or the right to worship, it protects the right to perform or abstain from performing certain physical acts in accordance with one's beliefs. Federal statutes, including the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, RFRA, support that protection, broadly defining defining the exercise of religion to encompass all aspects of observance and practice, whether or not central to or required by a particular religious faith. Guys, did you see what I just read? What I read to you was U.S. law. That's what I read to you. So when they put that statement in that article that says that each person makes their own choice regarding religion, that's because they're citing the law. That's why they say the elders are not authorized to coerce or pressure someone to remain as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, because that is the law. Now, how does this apply to writing a letter of disassociation? Okay, so let's take a look and see. So under jw.org, under the topic disassociation, this is what it reads. In paragraph 30, it says, the term disassociation applies to the action taken by a person who is a baptized witness, but deliberately, check this out, repudiates his Christian standing by stating that he no longer wants to be recognized as or known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Or he might renounce his place in the congregation by his actions, such as becoming part of a secular organization that has objections contrary to Bible teachings and therefore under judgment by Jehovah God. Wow, I mean, this is such gaslighting, I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Okay, now this is very important. I want you to pay attention to paragraph 33, okay? Now, it says, in contrast, if a person who is a Christian chooses to disassociate himself, a brief announcement is made to inform the congregation stating name of person is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Look at this next sentence. This is the most important sentence. Such a person is treated in the same way as a what? Disfellowshipped person. So here it is right here in black and white, guys. Watchtower is telling you, if you write a letter and disassociate yourself, then such a person is treated in the same way as a disfellowship person. You will be shunned. The congregation will view you as somebody they cannot associate with. I don't care what they recently said about, oh, you can greet someone or you can invite them to the hall. You will still be treated as if you are disfellowshipped. Okay, and why is this the case? Well, let's go back again. jw.org, the topic is disassociation, and we're going to go to the index subjects. And under disassociation, you see where it says court case over shunning. All right, so let's see what that court case was. Okay, so this article is Discipline That Can Yield Peaceable Fruit, the Watchtower Announcing Jehovah's Kingdom, 1988. And in this article, under question 3, it says, how do some react to the idea of disfellowshipping? It says, but someone may ask,
Is it not harsh to expel and then refuse to talk with the expelled person? Such a view surfaced in a recent court case involving a woman who was raised by parents who were Jehovah's Witnesses. Her parents had been disfellowshipped. She was not. But she, check this out, voluntarily disassociated herself by writing a letter withdrawing from the congregation. Accordingly, the congregation was simply informed that she was no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She moved away, but years later she returned and found that local witnesses would not converse with her. So she took the matter to court. What was the outcome, and how might this affect you? In order to understand the matter properly, let us see what the Bible says about the related subject of disfellowshipping. Now, this article goes on about how they're trying to some kind of way connect the Bible and disfellowship, and you can read that on your own time. But let's actually look at that actual court case. All right, so here's the case. It is Janice Paul, aka Janice Perez. She was the plaintiff, and she's going against the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. Again, there are many different entities or business entities underneath the umbrella of Watchtower, but that's the one of New York. So there's one in New York, Pennsylvania, and so forth. Anyway, let's read a little bit about this case. So here you can see where this was the U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit. It was argued and submitted on March 7, 1986, and decided on June 10, 1987. It says Janice Paul, a former member of Jehovah's Witnesses Church, appeals from the grant of summary judgment in favor of defendants, the corporate arms of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Paul contends that she's being shunned by adherents of Jehovah's Witness faith. She initially filed suit in state court, setting forth various tort claims. Defendants removed the action on the ground of diversity. Because the practice of shunning is part of the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses, we find that free exercise provision in the United States Constitution and thus of Washington State Constitution precludes the plaintiff from prevailing. The defendants have constitutionally protected privilege to engage in the practice of shunning. Accordingly, we affirm the grant of summary judgment, although the reasons differ from those of the district court. See generally, and then it talks about this other court case. So, do you see the reason why I showed you what the U.S. Constitution says? This same law applies equally to a member as well as the organization. So basically, they will use a law against you to protect themselves from being sued. And that's exactly what they did in this case. Okay, so now if that doesn't make you feel sick to your stomach, let me explain why her parents were disfellowship in the first place. This is going to really make you mad. Okay, the third paragraph down, it says, in 1975, Paul's parents were disfellowshipped from the church. According to Paul, her parents' expulsion resulted from internal discord within their congregation. The elders of the Lower Valley congregation told Paul that she and her husband should not discuss with other members their feeling that their parents had been unjustly disfellowshipped. That advice was underscored by the potential sanction of her own disfellowship were she to challenge the decision. And sometime after the elders' warning, Paul decided that she no longer wished to belong to the congregation or to remain affiliated with the Jehovah's Witness. In November 1975, Paul wrote a letter to the congregation withdrawing from the church. Okay, so again, remember, I told you that this is, Watchtower is a business entity, and they have different entities within the entity, right? So this congregation has its own LLC. And if you don't believe that, look it up. Each congregation has its own LLC because it's its own business entity. And as a part of the LLC, you guys that are baptized are considered members. Okay? And they define the members within it. Let's look in this paragraph. So I'm going to read the very first paragraph. It says, the witnesses, are a very close community and have developed an elaborate set of rules governing what? Membership. The church has 4 basic categories of membership: non-membership or former membership status. They are members, non-members, disfellowship persons, and disassociated persons. Okay? And then it goes into defining what a disfellowship person and a disassociated person is. Okay, so this paragraph 3 I'm getting ready to read. This is going to re-emphasize what I just said about how Watchtower is a business entity and they use verbiage to interpret the laws that will be applicable to you as a member. So here it is. In September 1981, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, acting through the defendants, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, Inc., and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, Inc., Incorporated, issued a new interpretation of the rules governing disassociated persons. The distinction between disfellowship and disassociated persons was, for all practical purposes, abolished, and disassociated persons were to be treated the same manner as disfellowshipped. The September 15, 1981 issue of the Watchtower, an official publication of the church, contained an article entitled Disfellowshipping, How to View It. The article included the following discussion. Okay, and it talks about those who disassociate themselves, which kind of tied in a little bit about what we had already talked about earlier, but they're trying to use scripture because, again, they are acting as a business entity but also as a religion, so they're using the constitutional rights that they have under the law to enforce this practice of disfellowshipping even though you are disassociated. Okay, so what is the moral of the story here? The moral of the story is, before you submit your letter of resignation or your disassociation letter, you may want to think twice. Why? Because under protected law in the United States, under the Constitution, they can use their religious freedom beliefs against you. So you will be considered, even though you're disassociated, you will be considered a disfellowship person, which means you will be shunned. However, if you do not write a letter of disassociation, then by default, you will fall into the non-member category, which still considers you to be a member, but you're just a non-member. AKA, that means you will not be shunned or disfellowship. Now, does that mean that Watchtower at some point later on in the future, they can say, hey, well, if you ain't been to the hall in so many months or years, we're going to automatically disfellowship you? Sure, they could, because again, that's their religious freedom. But if an elder is calling you or someone saying, hey, we need to talk to you about what your status is, you don't have to answer the phone. You don't owe them any explanation because they cannot coerce you or anyway force you to come back or say anything about what you've done or why you haven't been coming. So I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice, nor am I an attorney or anything else. But this is me just reading what I'm finding on jw.org and on the internet. Thank you so much for staying until the end. If you like my video, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.